Welcome to the Arithmetic Zone, and today for our first computer science lesson, we're going to have an intro to web development and an intro to HTML. Now, HTML is a coding language that's essentially responsible for the structure of almost every website on the internet. Think of HTML as like the skeletal system of the human body. It's responsible for the structure of the website and much of the information on that website. So right now I'm on Visual Studio Code, which is an application you can use to code many different types of coding languages. I recommend you go download this right now and follow along with this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is first make sure you have like a folder. So I have this folder titled CS for Computer Science, and this is essentially where I'm going to have like all my documents. So what I can do is hover over this Explorer tab and press New File, and let's just call it starter.html. Now what comes after that period denotes the file name extension. It's how the computer knows what kind of file this is. So because we called it .html, it knows that this is an HTML document. So to start off, we're gonna have an exclamation mark, and then this like little menu comes up. You can just press tab, and then it gives you this template which you can use to make websites. Now, I'm not going to cover what all of this really means yet, and even then I don't think I can do a very good job of explaining what all of these different lines mean, and you don't really need to understand what they mean to code websites. But anyway, you should just save your work. So you do that by pressing Control and S. When you see this little white dot next to the file name, that's how you know that you have unsaved work. So I press Control S, and now it's saved. Now if I want to view my website, I have two different options. You can first go into your folder in which this document is in. So in the CS folder, you can now see starter.html. And if I double click on it, and if I open it up, it gives me the document that I'm working on right now. But this isn't an ideal way of viewing a document. And the reason why is because every time you add code to this and every time you save, you're going to have to constantly refresh this page to see the update. So what I recommend you do is go to extensions, which is right here, and then search for live server. Now this is the one you should download. It's the one with 26.9 million downloads at the time of this video. Now I already downloaded it, so I just have to enable it. But even then, I'm going to have to relaunch Visual Studio Code in order for it to take effect. So I close out of Visual Studio Code, and this is why I had you save. And then I reopen it, and the application is smart. It's going to reopen on whatever file you were last working on. So I wait for it, and there you go. I have it. I have starter.html in the CS folder, and now I have live server, which if you look in the bottom right, there's a button called Go Live. And I press on this, and then there you go. I have my document the same as this one right here. Now don't worry, this is not your IP address. You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, let's go back to Visual Studio Code and actually get started on coding. So the first thing we're going to do is let's change the title of the tab. Right now it says document, so let's just say starter website. Now I gotta save again, so press Control and S, and then go back to the website, and you can now see why I had you download live server, because the live server page updated automatically to the title after I saved on Visual Studio Code. But when I opened it manually in the folders, it's not updated. Now if I refresh it, it does update, but you're going to have to continuously refresh every single time. And that's just not optimal when you're making big websites and you're constantly wanting to see edits. So we're just going to close this tab and only look at the live server page. Anyway, what we just did is we just changed the information inside of the title tag. Most tags in HTML, which are denoted with these triangle brackets, they have an opening tag and a closing tag. The closing tag has a slash before the name of the tag, And basically you put the information in between the tags, or sometimes you put it in the opening tag, but we're going to see which ones have that later on. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is let's just have like a header. So we want to go in the body, which is where most of our code is going to take place. The head usually describes information about the website itself, while the body is like the content of the website. So if we want to add headers, we could go ahead and add an h1 tag. And as you can see, when I add the h1 tag, it automatically adds the corresponding closing tag with the slash, and that's convenient. So there's also h2, h3, and it goes all the way to h6. And the higher that number is, the smaller the text is. Essentially, whatever you put inside the header, it's bolded. So let me go and add some text in between the headers, because it's best to show these kinds of things than to explain them. So let's put the letter A in the H1, then B, then C, then D, then E, and then F. Now, if I try to go see my changes right now, you're not going to see anything. Why? Because I didn't save on Visual Studio Code. So just press Control S, and now there you go. I have my text here. I didn't have to refresh the page. Now all the header tags, they have bolded text, and as you can see, the higher that number was, the smaller it is, with the H6 being essentially the same as regular text. Now what if I just wanted regular unbolded text? What I would do is add the P tag, which I think stands for paragraph, and let's just put in some random text. Usually that just defaults to lorem ipsum, so if I write lorem and then tab, it gives me like this long sentence, which is in Latin. It's essentially used as a sentence for like samples, so it doesn't really mean anything. So I pressed Control S already. If I want to go see the changes, you can see I have my text here. It's actually a little bigger than the H6 tag. I apologize for saying that. But as you can see, it's not bolded. And this is essentially, the P tag is what you use for the majority of text. Now, what if I wanted a space in between all these headers and the P text? Like, there's this little space, but what if I want it to be a little more? What I can do is add a tag called BR for break. Now, BR is unique because it doesn't have a corresponding closing tag. There's no /BR because you don't actually put anything in the BR. It's just a line break. So if I save and check it out now, the space increased in size. If I want to put in another BR and then save again, the space increased. Now I could have the BRs on the same line. They don't have to be on different lines. So if I save all this, the space is even bigger. Now let's add an image. Images definitely require a little more work, but essentially you would just use the img tag. Now img also doesn't have a closing tag, but what we are going to need is information inside of the tag itself. So if I want to pull an image source from the internet, I would press space, write an src and an equals, and then it automatically puts in these quotes for me, because that's where I'll be putting my URL. So I don't know what image I'm going to put. Let's just look up an image of a car. Alright, this looks pretty good. So copy image address, go back to Visual Studio Code, and paste it in there. Alright, now if I save this, let's see if the image shows up. And it does. But you know, it's pretty big. I want it to be a little small. So what can I do? I can change the width of the image by putting in another space after the src tag and then writing in width, not like that, width. And then I put the number of pixels I want it to be in. So let's say 200 pixels, and make sure you write px afterwards. Now if I were to save it, it automatically resizes the image so that it maintains the correct aspect ratio while making the width whatever you put it. Now you can also put in height. So let's say height is equal to 300 px, and this would change, okay, not like that, 300 px. But as you can see, because I put in values for the length and width, or the height and width, it resized the image so that it lost its original aspect ratio. So, I only want the width. I don't want to change the height so that it has the correct aspect ratio. There you go. But, putting in images where you put in the URL, it's not really the best way. And the reason why is, well, one, look at this. It's pretty long. I mean, it's just not really good to look at. But also, because images on the internet, they're not permanent. Like, they can get deleted. You don't know what happens to them. So if I want this to be permanent, what I really should be doing is go back to that image, and I want to save it to my computer. So let's go back to wherever I had that CS folder. So I had it in desktop, and then I had it here. And this name is pretty weird, so let's just call it car.jpg. I save it in there. Alright, now if I go back to Visual Studio Code, you can see that I now have this image. It's not gonna load yet because it was a pretty big image, but I have it in this folder, and I am opening this code from the CS folder, so that's why it showed up. Now, so what I can do instead of having this long URL, I can put in the car.jpg and then just save it, and it should still show up. There you go. Look at that. I shortened the source, and because I saved it on my computer, I basically guaranteed that it'll always be there when I try to run this code on this computer. Now, when you have lots of images, there's going to be like a lot of purple icons here. There's going to be a lot of image files here. So it's best to usually make a folder. So I just right-clicked and make a new folder. Let's just call it images. And now I'm going to go and drag and drop the JPEG image into the folder. It says, are you sure you want to move it into images? Let's just move it in. Now, if I look into my website, you're going to see the image is gone. It just replaces it with a blank image. And this happens if the image tag cannot correctly find the source. And it can't find the source because I just moved it into a folder inside of the CS folder. So what do? I gotta put in the folder name, then slash the car.jpg, which is the file name. Then save that, and it should work. There you go. Now, let's do something else. Let's put in a hyperlink. So how would I do that? I would use the A tag. Now this one does have a closing tag. So I'd write in my text inside. So let's just say, click me. If I save, you see it right next to the image, and we're going to explain why this happens in a future video, but it looks like, for now, it just looks like regular text, and if I try to click on it, nothing happens. Well, if I want to give it a link, I need to go into the A tag and write in the word href, an equal sign, and get the quotes. Now in here, this is where I put in the URL of the site I want to go into. So let's say I want to go to google.com. I'm going to write in https://google.com. Now, don't forget the HTTPS. You actually do need it in order for this to work. So if I go to the website, you can see the URL is now blue. If I try to click on it, it will take me to google.com. So we know it works. But what if I want to open it in a separate tab? Because it just took me to Google on the same page, and now I gotta go back by pressing on this back button, and that's annoying. So how would I do that? Well, in the A tag, I write in the word target and then equals, then it adds in the quotes automatically. So we gotta fix that space there, and write in underscore blank. If I write this and then save, now when I try to click on this, it's gonna open it in a blank tab. So now I don't have to go back to the page I was previously on. I can just keep on pressing this, and I don't have to go back. I can just close these out, and everything works. And that's going to conclude it for today. I think that's enough for a basic introduction. There's going to be a part 2 of this video where I go over more basic HTML tags. But I hope you found this tutorial to be useful, and I'll see you guys later.